My name is Eric K. Thomas, and I am the editor-in-chief of the Quintessential Gentleman. And today we are speaking with Jerome Crawford from Pleasantries. And we're going to have a great conversation today. We're talking about marijuana, cannabis industry, all of that good stuff. Jerome, how are you doing?
Man, I'm doing fantastic, Dick. I really appreciate you having me here. And like you said, man, we're gonna have a great conversation. I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited. And yeah, I mean, come on, cannabis, we, Mary Jane, whatever you want to call it, man, is gonna be a great baseline for an awesome conversation.
Awesome, awesome. So let's just start off with first. You are the director of legal operations and social equity at Pleasantrees. But first, what is Pleasantrees?
It's a great question. So, Pleasantries, we're here in the state of Michigan, and we are a vertically integrated cannabis startup. So, what that basically means, you say vertical integration, what that means is we are in the multiple key phases of a cannabis company. So, most notably, people think about cannabis is what? Grow. It's got to start somewhere. So, that's our core competency as a cultivator. Our CEO, Randall Buckman, he actually was one of the original caregivers in the state of Michigan about 10 years ago when we what we call the gray market, when the market was figuring out what that meant. You can grow so many plants and sell to certain people, that type of thing. And he took that expertise and really perfected it. Went into helping other people design facilities and things of that nature, and then did the whole door knocking routine. Was able to find enough investors, and in 2018, founded what was then Emerald Growth Partners, which is now Pleasantries Cannabis Company. So with that core competency, we started with a 50,000 square foot grow facility, which is a huge state of the art, growth facility, making us one of the largest wholesalers in the state of Michigan. So that's the number one area. Then we also have what you call a packaging and processing facility. That's the second level of vertical integration. And that is basically taking a finished flower and putting it somewhere, everywhere from packaging into ACE and Mylar bags to edibles and distillate and rosin and you name it. And then the third angle is the one that's very public facing. That's when people think about, oh, I'll go and where do I pick it up at, right? A retail store. So we launched our first set of retail stores last year in 2020 in the middle of a pandemic, which is wild in itself. The first one was in East Lansing, just north of campus of Michigan State, which is my alma mater. Went there for undergrad and law school, as did Randy, our CEO, for undergrad. And then we have our second store in Hamtramck, which is right basically on the cusp of downtown Detroit.
Awesome, awesome. So, say you went to law school, you're clearly a lawyer. Um, I don't back when you got your degree, this space wasn't there, especially in the legal realm.
Yeah.
So, what were you doing before you got into the cannabis industry, and then what pushed you into the cannabis industry?
Man, that's a great question. Great question. So, you know, the funny thing that got me into law is that I actually want to go into entertainment law, and I still practice entertainment law, do it pro bono. I've done it off and on over the years. In my, I guess you call it nightlife, if you will, for half of my life, man, I have been a professional in the sense that I've been signed with an agency, actor, stand-up comedian, model, man. And so, you asked me what to do in high school, I was going to go Nickelodeon, be on all that. Like that was the dream, right?
Right.
And so I found out there was such a thing as entertainment law. And I always had a passion for just the law enforcement, just, breaking that down. And I found out, oh, there's such a thing when a good friend of mine from high school found out her father was an entertainment lawyer. I said, wow, that's dope. And I go from there and go, wait a second, this pursue this law thing. So naturally, when you're in law school, is get a job somewhere, learn how to become a lawyer. So I worked in what you call big law. If you ever seen Suits, right? That kind of thing. Been in the whole billing a bunch of hours and working long days, late nights. Did that for about the first half of my career at Dickinson Wright, which is one of the preeminent big law firms here in the state of Michigan and really nationwide now. Went from there and went to in-house counsel work. And in-house counsel it basically means when now you're a lawyer inside the company, right? So instead of going from a bunch of different clients to their individual issues, you go to one individual client and deal with all their issues, deal with all their stuff. You live the day in the life. I did that for a publicly traded company as well as in the private sector, both essentially in the automotive world, Horizon Global, and a company called Mala. And then I came over to cannabis last year in 2020.
Wow, so this is
And
a recent development.
yeah, yeah, very, very recent, very recent. Now, what's not recent is so our chief legal officer, Ben Sobchak, is a close friend of mine. He actually was the first person I met at my first law firm during my interview. We hit it off because he's a rapper. He'll say retired rapper now, but he was lead lyricist in a band, and he was like, "Bro, I'm a rapper. You an actor." He's like, we're kind of the black sheep of this place, right? We hit it off and been friends for over a decade, and in the last year and a half, he made the transition after him becoming like outside counsel to different cannabis companies, namely Pleasantries. he's like, hey, I think there's an opportunity here. We started the conversation and furthered it, and found an opportunity that made sense. And the funny thing you mentioned about cannabis is that, well, why cannabis? Everyone says, well, why would you end up in this space?
Yeah.
I'm being transparent. Even my closest friends and family know, like, I was never the cannabis guy.
Yeah.
Like, legit, I don't think I ever consumed and tried until like 2017. And even then, I was like, is this high? What does high mean? I don't know, right? And this is around medical marijuana, on the cusp of that, and then the availability. You paired that, just general knowledge with the fact that my parents got their medical marijuana cards, suffer from chronic ailments. My dad, multiple back surgeries. My mom's got MS and fibromyalgia. Seeing it help them, and even just their openness to it was really powerful for me. You pair that with this other piece, and that's the kind of hybrid part of my role, and that's the social equity piece. It was the chance to come in and really make this role more than just an attorney for the company, which is notable because what we didn't know and find out later, because life happens fast, me coming here made me the first Black in-house counsel of a Michigan cannabis manufacturer.
Oh, wow.
Which is like humbling. It's like, wow, but it's also like, wow, really? I mean, you never know, but I don't want to be the last, right? It's important to me to continue to open those doors and provide more opportunities, for others to get in this space. But it's a, and I'm using air quotes, new space, right?
So you talk about your role there, but what is that like day to day? What are the type of things that you're working on as a director of legal operations, and then also part of the social equity piece?
Yeah, so let's break it in two, right? The first part is the director of legal operations, which seems to kind of speak for itself, right? You deal with legal stuff, man. And so, but when you break it down, and I'm actually also, I'm very humbled to be a professor of law at Wayne State Law School. So
Jobs.
yeah.
Jobs.
Hey man, I'm the anti-Tommy, man. I got 6 jobs, man. No, but nah, man. So very fortunate to be an adjunct there. Started teaching also in the pandemic. Throw that on. And what I tell my students often, like in the house counsel world, is that I'm a generalist. And what that means is every single day it could be something different, right? So one day I'm dealing with the intellectual property and the trademark work for the company. I'm a trademark lawyer by trade. It's a big part of my practice when I was in private practice. So now I'm working on the brands. Another day, it's, we got a potential joint venture with a company and working on an operating agreement for. Another day, it's just general contract review. And we got disputes we're working through, or potential lawsuit, or, or an HR and employment issue. So every day is something different. And the flip side is that social equity angle, right? Which, sometimes it's doing stuff like this. It's hopping on and having a conversation by sharing our story and sharing what that actually means to be an opportunity to educate in a platform. Another thing we're doing in the social equity space is social equity is kind of this term of art, right, in the cannabis industry. Most states use this word or something similar to it. And if you break it down and make it very simple, what it means is leveling the playing field. So we already know, I used air quotes, we're in a new industry. It ain't new, right? We are in an industry that has a complicated history, and it comes from the war on drugs, which was specifically targeted to Black and brown folks and communities of color. So because of that challenge, that difficulty, now that you legalize something, what you're trying to do is you certainly have communities and groups of people that have been marginalized by prohibition and criminalization more than others. So the 3 facets I like to say that social equity takes are: one is what every state does, and they lower the barrier to entry, right? So licensing fees, whatnot. If you come from a certain community that was impacted by the war on drugs, we make it easy for you to get involved. The second piece is the legislation and advocacy piece. And that's what we call basically everything that, there's bodies sitting in prisons right now that should be let out yesterday. Right. That's separate from legalizing the commercial market. It's just generally, there's kind of this sentiment that a lot of people agree with, they should be out, right? And then the third piece of it, I like to say, is basically the part that companies and operators like us can do from the inside out, right? And that is how can we, everything from giving back in the communities, right, to creating access to value and participation for people to get in the industry, everything from your hiring to partnerships that you might do. So, I mean, basically carrying your load, right? I mean, it didn't take some overnight thing for the war on drugs to happen. It took a long time, and the impact was exacerbated for decades. We're not going to fix it and unright the wrongs, or right those wrongs rather, overnight. But I think if we all do our part, we got a chance to make that change. So that's what I kind of get to help do and lead from the inside out.
So speaking about the criminalization of this particular industry, because to me it's disheartening to see that now that we figured out how corporations can make money from something, now let's legalize it and let's hit full throttle. Whereas to your point, Black and brown people have been going to jail for the smallest consumption or handling or whatever the case may be. But I would definitely like to get your thoughts on it, being on this side of the spectrum.
Yeah, man. It's disheartening is the word, right? And I think back to your question about why I chose to get involved in this, that was really the pull and the tug on me, right? Was don't get me wrong, it's risky to work in cannabis. What we do every day is federally illegal, right? I mean, literally, there's just no way to cut it. Banks, won't work with us sometimes. Certain service providers and audit companies won't work with us merely because what we do is not federally legal, right? So there's so many complications, and we have to say everything in cannabis is just harder, right? Than it should be. But that wasn't a deterrent for me, and a big reason why is what you said there. It was a chance to be part of the change we want to see. Now, what I like in the cannabis, legalization too, is imagine if we were around for prohibition, right? And we were at the start of an industry. And I say start because again, people were bootlegging liquor back then too, right? Alcohol was being made in the back of trucks and being in moonshine and you name it. It wasn't, new. But imagine if we were around for prohibition, and you sprinkle in a little bit of, systemic racism, right? Just sprinkle in a little bit of social media and factors like that, and you have this thing called the war on alcohol or whatever, right? And if we were here for that, this is probably what we would see. The difficulty here is the fact that if you start any new legal industry, and you create something tomorrow, we all can get into aerospace tomorrow. Soon there was no aerospace. Who's generally going to be better inclined to jump in a new industry? People with resources, right? Now, as we know historically in this country, people with resources is predominantly not Black and brown communities, which ironically in cannabis, which is creates this crazy contemporary it's a crazy system in the sense that part of the reason, not the only reason, as we well know, but one key part of the reason why certain communities are disadvantaged from entering this industry is because they were criminalized by the industry when it was illegal to do it. So that's the unique part about it, where I think there's more of an onus on this industry than any other, right? To make sure that we're doing what we can to kind of pay it forward. I mean, I always, it's a tough circumstance because people often ask the question where they say like, we hear it in our community sometimes, oh man, all the white folks, man, they're in the industry and they're who got, well, again, we just said a minute ago, who's going to be just, more positioned to jump into industries. Unfortunately, not minority communities historically for a host of reasons from what our country's history has shown us. But I think at no point do you say, oh, you blame folks or anyone should feel guilty getting the industry for having resources. But I think you have to step into it with a conscience and a compass. And frankly, that's why I like to define my role on the social equity side simply, is that I try to help be the conscience and compass for us. The book doesn't necessarily always say stop with me in that we all have to adopt it collectively for our leadership team, and we do. And that's what I really celebrate and love about us. But what it starts is saying, if you're going to get in the industry, don't forget about the history. Don't forget about the complicated nature of it, and do so intentionally, so that what we basically say is, as we do well, make sure we do good, right? I mean, we went through a pandemic, and 30 employees this time last year, we're at 150 plus now.
Wow.
We were essential the whole time. I operated through it. So we're trying to be intentional about the work we do, because we realize it's a privilege, man. It's a blessing to work in this industry. And as much as I say, oh, I can be the first of something, make sure I'm not the last. Not just at Pleasantrees, but other companies, and open up doors through the industry, because representation matters, but it's really what you do with your platform on top of that representation.
So true, so true. So yesterday, March 31st, Governor Andrew Cuomo passed a bill, or signed a bill that now in New York, in the state of New York, they have now legalized recreational marijuana, which is great. But that second piece was completely amazing to me, and which I was more happy about, is that it says that there will be an expungement of the convictions or prior convictions that relate to marijuana. Mm-hmm. And I want to know your thought process on that, from one, the idea that happened, and what will that look like for the country?
Yeah. So, New York, anything New York does, just like California, some of our coastal states, right? It grabs the headline, which is a good thing, especially when something positive happens, right? Thankfully, New York's not alone in that. Michigan, for instance, where we're located, did something similar with this sort of a Clean Slate Act that was created. And it called for a number of things. One was just woefully needed reform to the criminal justice expungement process. And, for instance, before that, you only had it was a hard cap and a limit on number of felonies and misdemeanors you can get actually expunged, which becomes very difficult. Let's be honest, people are overcharged, especially communities of color. It's not uncommon. So you might say, hey, I got 4 misdemeanors and 3 felonies, and shouldn't they're all from what you saw called the same one bad night. But I can only get a portion of them expunged because of silly parts of our law. So the law came out to basically make the process much more robust and broader, but also call for automatic expungements. So this is something that we've been living in here in our state. I haven't had a chance to look in the intricacy of the New York law, but I suspect it's similar where, it doesn't mean the moment he signs the bill, the moment the law goes into effect, everything's automatically expunged. Right. It's going to be a certain point in time. But when that point in time comes, when you have these automatic expungement, it's incredibly powerful, right? That's something that our governor did here too, Governor Whitmer, with, hey, let's put it in place that there's certain types of offenses, they're just coming off your record. So ours is going to start to go into effect, I believe, in 2023, I believe it is. In a couple of years, we're going to start to see that. We're going to start to see these automatic expungements. And when it comes to just like our view on it, my personal one, when it comes to legislation advocacy. I mean, that's one of our key pillars. I didn't share it earlier, but I guess it'd be a good point to touch on it now. We just launched our social equity plan, and we have a 4-point, foundational sort of pillar approach to it, where you can say everything we do falls under one or multiple of these. And we really think is that's our guiding light through our social equity committee that we just enacted shortly after I came on board. And the 4 points are: number one, access to value chain; number two, education; number three, legislation and advocacy; and number four, good neighbor. Simply put, the first one means participation. How do you create opportunities? Like I said before, we're vertically integrated. We got a chance to give a lot of jobs to people, right? And maybe we don't partner with going to find a grow somewhere or a store because we do all those things ourselves, but we have a unique platform from hiring. That's one of our key ways to create opportunity for people, change lives. Education. For many of our employees, this is their first time sometimes having a full-time job, first time having benefits, which we intentionally, and shouts to our leadership team, specifically our CEO, man, he made them so robust, right? I mean, even the level of what full-time means, being very, very flexible and liberal with that, right? Because it matters to us that we take care of our people, but also provide them life skills going forward. This may or may not be the company they stay with forever, but no matter what, we want to be part of preparing them for the future. The legislation advocacy will come back to, and good neighbor is basically, if we are in a community, support that community that supports us, right? So everything from giving back in the area. We went to Michigan State, as I mentioned, the East Lansing store. We established a scholarship. So we have a scholarship going there right now in East Lansing that we're giving out 10 book scholarships, $500 each. We just launched to just kind of help subsidize that cost. And similarly, we're pairing with people that come from these historically impacted communities, right? So, but back to your legislation advocacy point to kind of round that out, man, is that um, you know, we see that approach a number of ways. One, it's doing everything from expungement fairs and know your rights fairs, which is something that we'll look to launch this year. I've been very fortunate to do a lot of expungement work myself over the years. I mean, one of my closest friends got a chance to help him with an expungement. And it matters, man. It's life-changing to people to do that, right? Especially when you've suffered already. You've paid your debt to society. And then you walk around with this scarlet letter and this stigma. And I guess the reason I think we can really, really sympathize with that as an industry is because we're in an industry that is the equivalent of a scarlet letter.
Right.
Even from a consumer standpoint, not even someone that has a conviction. Just like this, you do what with can't weed, right? I mean, you know what I mean? The reefer. I mean, there's so many different negative connotations that we get a chance to sort of rewrite that narrative. And what better way to do that personally? We're also going to work, and we are working, I should say, with groups like the Last Prisoner Project, which the Last Prisoner Project is an organization that is basically committed to the release of the 40,000-ish or so folks that are still, locked up presently for nonviolent cannabis crimes, namely. And so we're a normal supporter of them. We're part of their Michigan clemency project that it just launched, but also we'll be looking to take on our own cases. Now that we have a legal team in the last year we just created, and we're going to hopefully grow, is to start actually finding our own pro bono cases for people that may be eligible for release. They just need people to support. You need attorneys out there or someone just willing to take on a case and help them fight that. Because we just released our longest serving prisoner, got clemency in the state of Michigan, Michael Thompson. He served 25 years, man, for a nonviolent cannabis crime, ping bonding for him and then serving all this time. And kudos to him, but there's a lot more Michael Thompsons that deserve the help too. And so we want to continue to be part of that change.
So you said, well, you are, the first Black person to be in this particular space in your state. I want to know, why is it so important for us to be in this industry and be in this space, as well as what are some tips for people looking to get into the industry, if you have any?
Man, I love that question, because what I said earlier, it's one of our famous hashtags we love right now. Representation matters, representation matters. And it does. And you'll never see me dispute that. But I think sometimes we stop there.
Yeah.
sometimes we stop there. And one of my personal mantras
You know,
is
we got the clickbaits, we got
oh,
the
oh,
words
man.
to say. As long as you say this word, you're okay.
You know what I'm saying? It's more get that hashtag. That's the one you need.
Exactly.
Representation matters. And it does. But if you stop there, you miss the mark. And I give you an example. In a legal world, especially like big law firms, right? A lot of times, I mean, they're revolving doors. I'll never forget being in my second year, I think it was, a practice, and I was in a big law firm, and there was an article by the ABA, I think the ABA Law Journal or something like that, and it had a picture on the front from like 1950, 1960, I think it was, and it showed like these are like the composition of number of black partners at like big law firms, right, or minority partners, and then you like flip the page, and it was today's snapshot, and the number was the same.
Wow.
The percentage had not changed in 50 years. You didn't move the needle forward. Now, a lot of not new people came into the roles, but they just were cycling out and getting poached and going elsewhere. It's the lift as you climb mantra that I live by. And that is that when you're in these spaces, make sure you use that platform to open doors. One of my mentors, Dennis Archer, always says when it comes to that lift as you climb, that he says my right hand is my strong hand. I always reach back with my right hand. I'm not holding myself up my strong, as in the most important thing I can do is to bring others along the way in that pipeline. So the reason I think it matters that we're in this space and, say me being the first attorney in this space, but guess what? Somebody was the first accountant, I'm sure, right? Somebody was, the first HR person, right? Because it's a new industry that requires all of these functional expertises. So, we get a chance to sit in these seats, be in these roles, celebrate that. Like, I'm humbled by it. Thank you. But in my mind, it's like, don't keep the spotlight on me too long. Because if it is, that's a problem. What that means is, yes, I'm here, thankful for that. But what am I doing and what are we helping encourage and compel within the industry to foster more of this kind of dynamic change where over time, it matters. And plus, let's be honest, part of the reason representation matters is not just for our community, but we keep coming back to it because we have to, right? And if anybody's a Snowfall fan like I am, right? I mean, it's almost like a representation of that.
I gotta watch the next episode. I forgot. I missed it yesterday.
I didn't watch it either, so we in the same boat.
Okay, we good. All right. No spoilers.
No spoilers, man. No spoilers. But if you a Snowfall fan, if you just generally read the caption for those that have yet to start it, please do immediately. But the takeaway from that in understanding the role that, and obviously in a somewhat, semi-fictional sense, but not that fiction, and it's pretty real, the role that government was playing then with respect to drugs and in communities of color, right? Um, you know, take it less sinister than that, from actually planting drugs in communities, to go to just the fact of the criminalization of it, to now see people sitting at the table, whether as obviously CEOs and members of leadership teams and C-suites, but even being the employees that get the industry and the opportunity, taking people that now have a conviction on their record, right? And that scarlet letter prevents them from probably walking into a ton of industries. They can't get an automotive plant job a lot of times because of the whole, ban the box initiative that hasn't gone over well yet. And so because of that, they got to answer yes and they don't get a job. Well, guess what? Not only is that not a scarlet letter or shouldn't be in our industry, you come over to us, we're like, we actually are looking for you, right? Because that's a specific way of paying it forward and being really part of a powerful shift, because that changes not just hope this person's life, their family's life, generational changes that create from now this person has, a really good paying job with benefits, has a chance to provide for their family. So that's a huge factor for us too.
But I also don't understand how big corporations don't understand how beneficial it is to diversify your company because of the input that you now can have on, okay, I now have this group of people. Now I know how they think. Now we have someone that says, no, we should do this, or no, you should talk this way. And across all spectrums, all industries, I never understand why you don't, from a business perspective, think that diversifying your organization would benefit you in the short and long run.
That's right. I mean, I love the way you say that, because let's be honest, everybody doesn't buy into diversity from the benevolent standpoint. Let's just keep it a buck, right? People don't always buy into it from the standpoint of this is what we should be doing is the right thing to do. But what you just said is the business case. And I know enough about being an in-house lawyer for years at different companies. You can at least always help sell your team on the business case. This helps make us more money, makes us a leader in the market. We get more market share, boom, 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 makes us look good. Even if you can buy into that, right? And to your point, there's value. It doesn't mean that, oh, great, we got two black guys here now, so we can always ask them questions on, being the representatives for all the black people in the world, right? Or like, hey, someone from the Asian community, you represent everybody there. Like, again, we know that can be overplayed. and overstate it, and we don't want to, make it that stereotypical. But to your point, there's value. There's value in the room because part of my role sometimes is not even these big things that get announced and launched. Sometimes it's, hey, Jerome, can we springboard this off of you? And it's not even from a standpoint of, hey, black guy, come over here. No, what I appreciate my team is they know the work I've been fortunate to do in diversity, equity, inclusion for years through bar associations and whatnot. I mean, Wolverine Bar Association is our like Michigan-based Black lawyers bar org, right? So prominent lawyers, judges, many mentors of mine came to that org. I was the president a couple years ago. And so that afforded me a ton of connections and just continued perspective to do the good work. So what I appreciate with my team is that, sometimes I'm sourced from just, hey, your knowledge, your brain on this matters. Again, not because you think for all of X insert demographic group here, but just that value you can help bring because it's stuff we wouldn't have thought about, right? Maybe can we just springboard this? And I think that's humility. It takes a lot of humility on the front end to simply even ask the question, to invite somebody in a room that may look different than you, may think differently than you, not because you need them to be the representative for a certain group of people, but because you recognize that diversity of thought, let's call it, that diversity of perspective is really powerful and make more impact. And for instance, not pulling a Gucci, right? And not pulling, stuff that other companies have done and was like, so was nobody in the room that
Nobody was there to tell you that wasn't a good idea.
so, did y'all run this by anybody? Right. You know what I mean? Like you can avoid those type of moments. And so it just, again, it takes humility, man. It takes an openness to perspective and a willingness to do it. And that's just even if you care about the business case. Now, on top of that, if you actually get good people that actually care about people too, and I want to be part of the change, which again was part of my reason to come in here, you can do even more, man.
So, what opportunities do you think that there are for people like us, black and brown people, as it pertains to entering this industry?
Yeah, I mean, across the board. I think we gotta, and this is my admonition. Sometimes I say to our community, right? Just communities of color. We're in the cancel culture era, as we well know, right? There's no more room for benefit of the doubt. There's no more room to be a human. So one, I think it's one bring the cynicism down a little bit, right? Because I hear that when sometimes I go in this conversation, people don't even understand. They just assume, oh, everybody in the industry, all the companies, everybody got money, and who got money? Not us. It's not as simple as that, right? It's kind of what we talked about earlier about who would have resources and everything. But being in an industry is beyond just I can own all the businesses, right? Sometimes it's an approach where you're saying, it's opportunities of getting in as an employee, right? You get that same, let's say, functional expertise and skill set that you want to get into it. So you have companies like ours that we're fortunate and blessed to be growing and whatnot. We're always hiring. We're always looking for some type of role somewhere, right? One of our areas of improvement that we're taking on ourselves and looking in the mirror saying, okay, let's get more intentional about where we're hiring from. Because even hiring on Indeed all the time sounds great. Well, there's inherent bias in Indeed and LinkedIn and stuff like that because of just access to technology and whatnot. So we're trying to be more intentional about the job placement orgs we work with, using our team to do more intentional, getting the community, bring the jobs to people. So the ways for people to get involved, man, are going to be throughout every facet of the company. So every from an entry level position where you say, hey, I may not have the college degree and some super expertise or law degree, master's degree. That's fine. You have something you bring to the table, which hopefully just simple as a work ethic. There's many entry level jobs where you don't require any training. And again, you have the functional jobs. So you got maybe accounting world jobs, IT jobs, things of that nature. So the employment is going to be one of the key ways that you create participation because everybody, let's be honest, can't be an owner. Everybody can't walk in and just merely, hey, even have the capital or the resources or the connections or whatever you might need, regardless of what you look like. And then there are the other angles. So when it comes to how cannabis rolls out, and I'll speak for Michigan, a lot of states are similar. A state will legalize it, kind of what we hear about New York doing it. And then generally what happens, at least it happens here, is that on a city by city basis is how they then have a licensing process. So the state of Michigan, when they made recreational marijuana, legal in the last few years, oh, it's legal now. Okay. How do I get in it? Well, you got to wait on that city to release their set of rules and that city release their set of rules. Namely, and this made headlines recently, Detroit released their ordinance, right, for recreational adult use marijuana licenses. And that's everything from obviously retail stores, the growers. That's also things such as a secure transporter. I mean, I know certain people that are secure transporters and have businesses there that are killing it. You have delivery models, right? You have consumption lounges, which are going to come around. There's so many different angles to try to get into the industry. You have people that get temporary event licenses. Maybe your thing is I'm a chef. I'm looking to start doing cannabis infused type of foods and events. So I'm gonna get myself a temporary event license and do sort of large scale events. It's all about finding, I think, your niche and your angle. If you're passionate about this industry, if you want to get into it, And what do you bring, to that? What skill set can you bring to that? Maybe say, I don't bring anything. Say, bring your work ethic, right? Bring just an intention, and there's a role for you, I'm sure, somewhere in the variety of companies that are continuing to grow. The reason the market is there, and I mean, I'll leave on this because I know I'm rambling, but it matters, is that you got to keep in mind the traditional market, let's call it, right? The illicit market. We don't like to say black market. Another thing that we're pushing as well is trying to take the connotation away from saying the black market, right? Because of that negative connotation they can have. But the illicit and traditional market trumps, it dwarfs the legal market. It's not even close. So what we mean is people are still getting their stuff from somewhere,
Yeah.
right? But we're promoting the legal market not just because it helps our business. No, what it means is you're getting better quality, better safety, better consistency, right? Because let's be honest, the irony of people even sometimes pushing it like vaccine stuff in their bodies, I always joke is like, and you buy stuff from people you have no idea where it came from and put in your body.
Exactly.
Um, but that aside, I come back, I joke on that, but I come back to the point that you know the market will continue to expand because we don't actually know the real size of it,
Yeah.
right? Because the traditional market, the illicit market, still just dwarfs it so much. So more jobs and more opportunities are going to continue to come around.
Awesome, awesome. So everything looks great. We cities is legalizing. You got you can do events. States is legalizing recreational. You can walk around, smoke, whatever.
Yeah.
What are the challenges right now in the industry? Because I think that we all think it's all great and we want to run towards everything, but I don't know, but I do feel like there are some challenges that the industry still does have.
Yeah, I mean, one of the big challenges, and I'll dive into it more, is I mentioned everything's harder in cannabis.
Mm.
So one challenge in particular, I would say, is your service providers, your vendors. Every company to run a business, you need support. You probably can't do everything your companies do in house, right? You got to find a bank to work with, right? You got to find somebody to manage your HR, information system, your platform. You've got to find who's going to be your health insurance provider, that type of stuff, right? Which sounds all like, oh yeah, anybody can do that. Well, guess what? We can't offer 401ks for our employees no matter how lucrative we are right now. You know why? Because those are federally regulated and facilitated, still federally illegal.
So it's a lot
So
of infrastructure.
infrastructure issues. You can't, the amount of times that I've had to pivot from vendors because you also have a lot of, targeting that happens in the cannabis industry because service providers and folks know that we can't always use the traditional folks. Oh, you get your rates all of a sudden get jacked up and everything's harder, it's more expensive. And one thing we've tried to do is not pass that cost and that difficulty down to our employees, right? So it was shop around to find the best plans that don't involve our employees paying the employee portion. They're using their whole checks just to get insurance. A lot of them, it's their first time maybe getting insurance. You know what I mean? So that matters to us. So that's a big challenge. I think is just finding good service providers. The banks thing is a big issue. And we've had corporate cards get cut off out of nowhere because, hey, you guys selling weed over there? Yeah. Yep, still doing it. Just like we told you at the beginning, we're not hiding that fact, right? But it all has to do with different companies' sensitivity to that, right? And their risk tolerance. I mean, it's not that they're doing anything illegal, but sometimes they don't want to be associated with it. And that goes back to the stigma side of it. So that's one big thing the industry still struggles with because you mentioned New York. Oh man, big news, New York is online. Yes, but it's still federally illegal and that sits in people's mouths a different way. It's a different taste in people's mouths. Um, I think the other challenge we have is what you call cannabis culture. So we launched a podcast about 2 months ago called Pleasant Talks, and we talk about cannabis community and culture. And one of the things that we always try to unpack is what does it mean to be what does your user look like, right? What does your consumer look like? A lot of people have in their mind of who they think that person is, right? It's probably somebody in their family or a friend or somebody they've seen on TV, and they think they know, and it's super stereotypical. So destigmatizing that is a huge part of like breaking down the walls, right? 'Cause let's be honest, you got a lot of people in the world that don't drink alcohol, but they're not gonna look at somebody different because they pour themselves a drink, right? It's normalized. We have to normalize cannabis culture because you normalize the consumer, which might be the soccer mom that you didn't think actually goes and smokes on her private, or that uses topicals, right, or CBD products, things for joints or something like that, or uses edibles or tinctures. You don't know. A lot of us don't know what the consumer looks like. So that's another big part of the industry, man.
And you think about it also, you think about the impact of marketing. How can you do target marketing if you don't know who your consumer is? And now you're leaving money on the table. You don't know who you're talking to and how you're talking to them because everyone's so, oh no, I don't do that. Or you're not sure who this person does, something like that. So that's a very, very good point.
Yeah, you know one thing I love, man, is when people as they come out with their truth moments. I see it on TV or somebody they be like, some. So I've been using it for. It's like people. It's a relief, man. People been like I've been wanting to say this for a long time. I too, am a consumer, that type of thing, and it goes a really long way. Because that's how it breaks the wall down. I mean, I know it's part of me coming to the industry, right? Like even though people knew me growing up, people around me, friends, homies do it. It just wasn't my thing. Never anything against it. The fact that I can now stand on this and say, yeah, it's okay. It normalizes the behavior and makes people feel okay with being themselves. They're not hiding a part of themselves based on some BS judgment they think is gonna be tossed their way. So that's another big hurdle I think our industry is facing. And then the third hurdle, man, that really that strikes me, and I'd be remiss if I didn't say it because it's a big part of what I do every day, is um, not losing sight of the history,
Mm,
right? And that's a challenge I think for all of us as operators. It's easy because we deal with just the day-to-day of running a business, which is difficult, and literally we have to survive before we can thrive,
right.
right? We gotta make it, and we can go from a crawl to a walk to a run before you can even think about doing certain things. But I think it's incumbent on all of us, and what I try to be a reminder for our company, but also, is to for other companies. Let's be honest. If we start an arms race of social equity, that's a great thing,
Yeah.
right? If people out social equity each other, because people get blessed in the long run.
Yeah.
It's not a bad thing when you do more good. And we're gonna outgood you. Okay,
Let's
cool.
let's
Go,
go.
go. That's fine if you truly care about the reasons behind it. It's not about getting brownie points. And we're not here to like go film ourselves giving money. Like, no, we are big on do the right thing because you're supposed to do the right thing and be intentional and meaningful and genuine about it. So I think that's going to be a continual challenge within the industry. It's to not lose sight of that. Let's be honest. Like I said, everybody's not benevolent. You got certain people that legit hopped in this thing for money and could care less about everything else, and they'll check a box and do a social equity thing or do a give back thing to say they had to. And I'm not worried about convincing folks like that necessarily, right? Because that was their intentions from the beginning. But many of us that do care, or from the outside looking in, people that come in the industry that care, let's not forget about the past and continue to make it a part of what we do every day.
That's awesome. And my last and final question is, what can we look forward to from Pleasantries as well as Mr. Crawford? What can we look forward
Oh man, oh man. All right, this is gonna take a
to?
minute. No,
We're gonna see some voiceovers. We're gonna see the move. What's up?
it's gonna take a minute to unpack this one. No, no, man. E man. From the company, let's focus on that. From our standpoint, I mentioned we're launching our social equity plan. And so we'll be formally rolling that out, putting it out, as well as a number of social equity initiatives throughout the year. As a company, we're in a really exciting phase because we are, again, founded in Michigan. We've got cultivation, processing, retail stores. We're going into Massachusetts. So we're going to be in Massachusetts online within the next couple of months with two retail stores, ultimately going to be three retail stores. We're going to have a cultivation operation that's going to be twice the size of the one we have here, 100,000 square foot cultivator. So huge, huge jump we're making in the mass. What's cool about that is that again, also from our understanding, it's going to make us the first Michigan founded company to become a multi-state operator. So you've got other companies out there that we call MSOs or multi-state operators, or they do business in more than one state. Anybody else that's in Michigan, they came here from somewhere else. So that's another really cool thing that we're excited about is being the first ones to branch out from here. So beyond that, look us for other markets. Look us for more retail stores. I mean, as I mentioned, these things, it's like shooting with a shotgun, not a sniper rifle, right? Because you don't know when the state is going to come online, what their licensing process is. And so we've got definitely, what I mean? We've got our balls in different courts, right? Some eggs in different baskets. So hopefully more retail stores looking at coming online in 2020. We have a couple that officially just came through. So we'll be launching at least two more this year and then potentially more, beyond that. So definitely look out for Pleasantries on that. Our delivery model is going to be expanding also considerably based on a new partnership that we just locked in as well. So expect a ton more delivery in the Metro Detroit area through that partnership. So yeah, man, we want to be more well known as a brand, but maintain our quality, our consistency, everything we do. So lot more on the horizon there from Pleasantry standpoint. For me, it's continue to do this, man. Live this life, be a platform, be a beacon. I have no problem with, you see me normally rocking a Pleasantries hoodie, man, t-shirt, living with that level of authenticity, which I personally love to do, because that in itself breaks down beer. That's a whole other conversation we can do for another day, man. It's just like living your truth, right? And the power of that. You've never seen me more authentic than people have seen me before. I did not have locks in the law firm for the question, no. But I also didn't cut on my facial hair either. I didn't have this beard, probably couldn't grow it. You know, didn't have the earrings in every day, but wore them every on weekends and stuff. So, you know, you'll see me, man, going forward, really living authentically, and yes, hopefully on the entertainment side, I still continue to do stuff there. So you might catch me in a voiceover, might catch me in a commercial, doing some stand up comedy somewhere, man. So, yeah, you know, I'm excited, man, to be in the space. I'm thankful for the opportunity, but I'm doing my part to make sure I keep paying it forward.
Awesome, awesome. Well, Mr. Crawford, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. It was an amazing conversation. Hope everybody got some really good. I mean, you had to get some tips. I mean, this man was spitting all of the gems. But thank you so much.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate you having me, man. If I didn't say it before, got a rep for the city of Detroit, man. My hometown, West Side 7. I realized I didn't say that earlier. And so people come, they'll come for me if I don't say that. So I got to make
You
sure I
have
say,
to.
thank you for having me, brother. It's been an honor, man.
Of course.